What's up, everybody? If you're here, you probably pulled the trigger on a fancy new fish finder, or you're wanting to purchase a new unit and you're evaluating whether you should install it yourself or not. Hopefully, after watching this video, you'll have the information that you need to make that decision. If you're anything like me, you are chomping at the bit to get it installed and getting out on the water. This video will provide general guidance on how to install the new fish finder quickly and easily so you can get out on the water and put some fish in the live well. Let's get into it. The fish finder we're installing today is a Humminbird Helix 9 SI Plus Gen 3. It will be mounted on the console of my Tracker 195 TXW Tournament Edition. My boat already has a graph installed, so it will be a direct replacement of the stock Lowrance triple shot unit. This will help a bit as there are wires and drilled holes already in place on the boat. If you're doing a new install, you will need to drill a few holes and take the proper precautions to seal up those holes. All right, everybody, here we are at the back of the boat. There's a couple of general rules that we want to talk about when it comes to mounting the transom mount and the transducer to the boat. So the first being the location of the transducer relative to the prop. So the two things you want to consider there is the prop rotation as well as the distance away from the prop as far as, direction between, from the prop here over to the side of the boat. So the guidance for the rotation of the prop is if you have a clockwise rotating prop, then it's going to create turbulence that spits towards the left side of the boat. So you want to mount the transducer on the right hand side of the boat. Whereas if you have a counterclockwise prop, it will spit more turbulence off to the right hand side of the boat, so that you want to mount the transducer on the left side. So as you can see here, my transducer, my old one, was actually mounted on the left hand side, and this is a clockwise rotating prop, so it is spitting turbulence to the left hand side. So having said that, there was never really any issue with my Lowrance transducer getting any kind of bad readings or being affected by turbulence in really any way. So I'm going to go ahead and keep it on the left hand side since I have all the screw holes and everything from the stock setup. I'm actually going to keep it over there because I don't want to fill up a bunch of holes and have to re-drill holes on the other side of the boat. So I don't foresee any kind of issue mounting it on the left hand side versus the right hand side in my case. Of course, that is the guidance for Humminbird to pay attention to the rotation of the prop. So the second consideration is the distance away from the prop. So if you can imagine the prop spinning in a perfect circle, the edge of the prop here, the circle, it needs to be 15 inches away from the prop to be in less turbulent water. Whereas, again, here, we're probably more like 8 inches away. The reason being behind that is there's strakes or ribs that go up the length of the boat in this area right here. And if you go any further, you're actually running into the bunk. So those are two other considerations that you don't want. You don't want to put your transducer behind anything that's going to generate any kind of water turbulence. So I guess the other way that Tracker could have done this is just push it out to the on the other side of that bunk and put it further away. However, you can see that the angle of the boat, how it comes up. There's not enough metal to actually fit the bracket on once you get over that wide. So they had to cheat it and come back in. Most likely, if you're running an aluminum boat or some fiberglass boats, you will have to cheat a little bit. Of course, those are kind of best practice and guidelines, getting 15 inches away. The best guideline that I can give is make sure that you mount it as far away from the prop as possible where you can still fit it, provided you're not hitting a bunk or any kind of rivets or water disturbing, anything that's going to disturb the water. So in this case, we're cheating it and coming back into about the 8-inch mark, and I'm going to be mounting it here. So in the next clip, we're actually going to show a close-up of how we mount it and some considerations going into that. Alright, so I'm here on the left hand side of the boat where I'll be replacing this transducer mount and transducer. I'm going to take this mount off. Alright, that's out of the way. I'll keep these. All right, so here we are with a close-up of where we're gonna mount the transom bracket. So as you can see here, this is that strake or rib that runs vertically along the boat. That's gonna generate some turbulence, so we wanna move onto this side of that. And it's kind of hard to see here with the contrast, but there's a bunk right here, so we don't wanna mount it any further this direction because it'll actually interfere with you trailering it. When you get it in there, it's going to make contact with the new transducer and potentially break it. So we don't want to do that. So we're actually going to place it just where Tracker had it, just off to the side. So here's your new transom mount bracket. We'll put it in place and we'll see that our holes don't actually line up. So what we want to do is make sure that we have it exactly where we want it, where we think we want it. And then another consideration is making sure that you mount or you mark your holes 1/3 down. We want to do that so that more than likely you're going to need to move your bracket up in direction than you are down. So if you move it too far down, your transom or your transducer is going to stick out under the boat and make contact and generate be in turbulent water when you're trolling. So I've marked those holes 1/3 of the way down, and you can see this hole is not going to be used. So we'll actually fill that up with marine grade sealant, and we'll go ahead and drill these 2 holes for the new screws for this bracket here. And we'll check back when we get that set up. All right, so in this case, Humminbird recommends that you have a 5/32 drill bit to fit the screws that came with this mount. So from this point, all you have to do is drill. You really only want to drill about 1 inch in depth. That's just to ensure you don't drill too deep and run into any kind of wiring or pumps or anything that may be back behind there. It's going to be pretty simple. As soon as you poke through, quit drilling. Don't put a bunch of pressure on it, so as you poke through, you're not, jamming your drill in, putting too much pressure. Let the drill bit do all the work, and that'll serve you well. The next thing I want to bring up is making sure that you drill the hole at a perpendicular angle to the transom here. So you don't want to drill parallel with the ground, or otherwise you're going to end up drilling at an angle, and you're going to have trouble, with water seeping in and everything. So you want it nice and perpendicular to the transom and not the boat here, or to the ground. So you want to not drill at this angle, but actually, since my boat tilts a little bit, I want to drill at this angle. So let's go ahead and get that done. Just like that. we're done. So we're actually going to take our marine sealant and plug up this hole. Put some marine sealant in each one of these holes. Put the screws in and snug the bracket down. We don't want to tighten the bracket all the way down yet because we're going to have to do some adjusting later. All right, so now we're here, got our marine sealant. We're going to go ahead and fill this hole up. Nice clean install. That'll cure in a couple hours, or dry in a couple hours, and then end up curing over the next 24 hours. So we don't want to go out and expose this to any moisture or water in the meantime. All right, put the middle one in. It's nice and snug. Make sure that is parallel with the boat. That's much better right there. I already did this incorrectly. I don't know why you guys are listening to me. Getting a little too ahead of myself, just like always. You need the screw to run through the bracket first, and then into this washer. I'm so used to putting washers on before, you get kind of messed up. So go ahead and put all those on while I got you here. Alrighty. Let's go with the top. Got that in there. This side. About 1/3 down, like we had talked about. Leave that kind of snug. Okay, now we can make sure that's nice and parallel. That's much better right there. Okay, again, you don't want to make sure that that's snug all the way down because we will end up doing some adjustments in the next couple steps. So before I set up the next shot, I want to show you guys the next step. It's pretty self-explanatory. You take your transducer here, and you take your transducer mounting bracket, and you just align the holes to where they line up and fit, which would be about right here in my case, and you use the provided screws to screw that down. So I'm going to do that, and then check back in. Now that you got the transom installed, or the transom transducer bracket installed onto the transducer, we are going to mount that to the transom bracket. So using the provided hardware, we're going to put that on. So we take this, Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and snug all of this up. Remember, we are going to do final adjustments later, so a snugging up is just fine at this point. Nice and snug. They're snug. So as you can see here, our transducer is actually mounted below the bottom of the boat. So we want to make sure that's about level, about even, maybe even 1/4 inch above the boat, just for good measure. So let me get my socket here and actually loosen those screws up a tad. There's the one that was tight. So now we can move it up. Okay, so we're about all the way up. And we are right at the bottom of where we need to be. So I'm just a tad low. Which, well, a tad lower than what I'd want to be, but we're good here. Make sure that we're level again. We can pivot here. That pulled it up nicely, and make sure that we're level. It actually went a little bit down. So in order to tighten those two bottom ones, you will definitely need to take this bracket back off, but we kind of knew that going into it, so that's not an issue. Still not quite level. There we go. That's perfect right there. So I'm going to get that done. I think you have the general idea. You can see that it's nice and level with the bottom of the boat. When you go for final adjustments, once you get your transom bracket fully tightened and you want to go and mount this, the recommended angle is about 5 degrees. So you don't want it perfectly level with the hull. You want it about 5 degrees is what the instructions from Humminbird said. So I'm going to get that completed and check back with you guys after that. All right, now that you can see, this is just above the bottom of the boat, and I'm tilted down at a 5-degree angle. You can't really see that. The next thing is quite simply just to reroute all the cabling. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of sealant in here, since my replacement screw, or my washer, is a little bit worn. So just for added measure, squirt a dab of that in there. Make sure it gets there. Okay. Now I will first, I gotta get my screw. There it is. Cable clips are definitely a good way. I'm really excited to see Tracker use those. I use these a lot in my day job. They are fantastic. There we go. There that is. Make sure it's level. Drive that screw home. Just like that. So now I'm going to continue up the direction of the boat, routing all the cable, and the next time I'll check into you is when we start mounting the control head, trying to get the wire up through certain cavities, things like that. So we're kind of on the home stretch now. Typically, this is probably the thing that people are worried about the most, is mounting the transducer, making sure, because it's drilling holes in below the water line. So there's obvious, misgivings that people have that, they may not want to drill holes in their transom and risk getting water in there. But I'm here to show you that it's nothing to worry about. It's going to be fine. If you screw up, plug the hole, try and put the bracket over it so you can hide your mistake, and you're going to be set. So again, I'm going to route this cable up, probably shoot some B-roll footage of that, and check back in with you to mount the control head. Thanks. Now that we have the wire routed all the way up to where we're going to poke it through for the control unit, it's time to dismantle your old unit. Of course, if you don't have a unit already installed, obviously you won't have this step. We'll remove this, set this aside. I've got plans to build a pump back boat, so hopefully we can use that for that. Carefully remove the screws, and we're going to see what kind of opening we have. So eventually there's going to be graps up front that are going to be Ethernet networked together. So we'll have to make sure all our holes and everything will accept the additional cable for that. I've never removed this thing, so it's going to be a surprise for all of us on what's behind there. All right. Nice big hole, right on. So this is perfect. This should have enough room for all of the equipment, plus any of the networking equipment that I have plans for in the future. So I'm going to get my cables routed up. The next step would be to fish the transducer wire up that we just ran, and as well as fish the power wire down. I have a fuse box that's down underneath the console here. I think they do that on most tracker boats. So it's going to be perfect. We have plenty of length and everything for that. Once we get down there, I'm going to try and video it as best as possible since it's a tight area, very dark. I don't know how good it's going to be, but we'll talk about a little bit about voltage and amperage, and that I often see that talked about on the web. People really don't understand that, and since I do electrical and mechanical stuff at work all the time, I can expound on that and drop a little bit of knowledge on why we take everything into consideration there. So I'm going to get the wires ran up. I'm going to get my swivel mount that we had talked about earlier mounted. Since the new graph is quite a bit larger, I'm going to need to put a swivel mount so it doesn't make contact with the console. So I'm going to get that done, route those up, route the other power down, and check back with you in a minute. Thanks. All right, everybody. It's time for the biggest trick that I could give you for this whole process. So I can feel this transducer does not have, coils or anything up in this control panel, because when I tug on it, it actually pulls all the way at the back end of the boat. So I can see it pulling. So what I'm going to do is take an old piece of wire. This is by no means my trick. but I haven't seen very many people try this on their boats. So I'm going to take this old scrap wire that I have, tape it in such a way that it won't pull loose, and hopefully there's no obstructions in there all the way there to where I can just zip this this old scrap wire through. Then I'll tape the head of my new transducer and pull it right back in. So hopefully that will work. And you know, in my career, we do this a lot. I used to run a lot of cable, so it has kind of prepared me to do things like this. So you want to start here, and you want to wrap the tape where it's super tight, and all you worry about is the head. So you want to crush that cable to where it's as slimlined as possible. And then you travel your way back up, making sure that tape is tight. So likewise on this side, just in case we have to pull it back through, if you don't tape up this end, when you pull back, this will get stuck on things and want to fold up, and you'll never get it back out. So go ahead and tape this side up as good as possible. Build up that head a little bit. So you can see now it's nice and streamlined. So I'm going to go on the other end, and I'm going to pull this thing and see if it can go through. So I'm going to have to put this down, and I'll be right back. Oh no. Okay, got stuck on something. So pull it back gently. Pull it back again. It's definitely passing through a narrow spot somewhere. I feel like it's right at the edge of this plastic. Ooh, it's in there. Okay, there we go. So this is almost work. No, it is completely stuck. So I'm going to go back to this carpeted piece. Hopefully it's through all the plastic, because that's the hardest part to take off. So hopefully it's right at the edge of the plastic, so when I take this carpeted piece off, that carpeted piece off right down here, once I take that off, hopefully that head's going to be right here at this plastic. So let me do that and check back. Alright, here it is, guys. That trick ultimately did end up working. So that's perfect. So I've got plenty of length back here. I'm going to go fix the slack and be right back. Make sure that nice. Make sure that cable's not tight anywhere. Right on. So now, which kind of brings us to our next issue, is doing a modification to where I can actually take this swivel mount and get the cables out of it. So we're going to need to either notch this back half or something of that nature, or just drill new holes. I'm not super crazy about drilling more holes. I'd rather, you know, notch this just a tad and spray paint it black again. That way it looks a little bit cleaner, but we'll have to figure that out once we get there. So for now, we are going to untape this. I can't believe that that actually worked. I can. We've used it a lot, you know, back in my previous career. We've done more difficult things like sucking wire through pipes with vacuums and plastic bags and string. We've done all kinds of things. So if you ever need help fishing a wire, why don't you go find one of those low voltage guys. They're very, very handy at doing it. Or, you know, an old electrician, somebody who's been doing, you know, the work for a long time, has all these kind of tips and tricks. So here we go. So I've got my power wire here, and I've got my transducer all the way up where we're going to be mounting it. So I'm going to manage this slack back down in the console. I'm going to hop on the inside and do the wiring for the power side here in a minute, as well as try and figure out what I can do about this swivel mount here. So once I get that stuff figured out, I will check right back with you guys. We will get our connectors. Let's see, they used ring type, so let's use ring type ourselves. Alright, so the distance between our positive and negative buses is much greater than the wire that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and strip off quite a bit more of this jacket so that we can spread the wires out even further. So here I go, I've got that. And that's perfect. I'll be able to, well, let's go just a tad more so we're not stretching those wires, putting any strain on those wires. All right. So first, let's make sure. Yeah, okay, perfect. It goes in there nice. Put our wire in there. Since this is such small wire, you always want to use your red connectors. Crimp that nice. Make sure it's tight. Okay, it's not going to come off. Now be careful, this is 12 volts. 12 volts at certain amps can actually, you know, destroy equipment. It's not going to necessarily hurt you at this amperage, but just be very careful that you don't, you know, short out any of these, bridge any of these connections. Make sure that's nice and tight. Okay, not going to come off. Where did the screw go? There it is. Put this through. And there we go. That's pretty much all we needed to do. Alright, after thinking about it, I found the best way to do this was just to go ahead and put a drill bit in my Dremel and notch out this area here so that when I put this ram mount on, the wires are just going to peek out. Right, like so. I think that's the, you know, that's pretty clean there. I think it's going to be pretty slick. So I'm going to drill these holes, get this ram mount mounted, and you know, check back with you once I'm ready to mount the control head. So nothing special. I guess what I'm going to do off camera is mount this permanently and make sure it's in there tight before I go on. Thanks. All right, now we have our bracket installed. It is time to install our cable tray. 2 screws on the back. All right, let's match these up. So they're these holes here, obviously that you just match them up. So this one's the power one. The keeper arms are here. All right, so our big one is going to be power. Get the power wire out the way. Or sorry, the big one is the transducer, not power. Let's get that mounted straight. Move the cable out the way. And there's our power. So, or sorry, I keep saying power. It's the transducer. Sorry, guys. All right, this guy looks like he's gonna fit on the complete opposite side. Right here. Put that guy in. Route that cable. And that's it. So the other spots are going to be for Ethernet wiring, things of that sort. So this is what we've got so far. Get that to focus here. So that's what we've got. Now it's time to install the keepers. There's the keepers. Here is the lid. Flip it back over. Okay. Now it's time to put the screws back in. We are good to go. And there is our cable tray. Set that to the side for a minute. Grab our fancy new control head. Thumb screws. Do this the right way. Thumb screws in. And there we are. Perfect. Now, it is time to put our cable tray attachment. And voila! There is our finished product of our control head. So you can see that was pretty easy overall. Now really all that's left to do is take it out to the lake and test her out. So as you can see, we're getting some amazing imagery out here at Falls Lake in Raleigh, North Carolina. Maintains bottom contact at speed, at full speed. I think she's doing just fine. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you saw how easy it was to do it yourself when it comes to installing new fish finders. I realize DIY is not for everyone, and there's no shame in that. There are plenty of awesome guys out there that will hook you up and do a great job. If you thought this was helpful, like and subscribe. If you need help or just want to kick it, drop a comment and we'll get you taken care of. Until next time, catch you later.